This may be somewhat of a stream of consciousness, BBC, so I will apologize beforehand if the conclusion is not correct. But it's something that I've been thinking about these past few years. A lot about the teachings on how things exist by mere designation, by being merely labeled. That we as human beings, sentient beings, we label things. We label objects all the time. I think from my mind, it helps us to navigate samsara as we try to figure out what's going on, to help us to work our way through life. So due to causes and conditions, parts, and depending on how they function, we generally agree for the sake of convention and convenience and navigation to a term designated to an impermanent phenomena, and that's pretty much, we do this all the time. But because our minds are totally under the control of ignorance, we forget that the world exists due to these three things: cause and conditions, parts, and dependent designation, and instead impute a kind of existence where they appear to exist totally from their own side, by their own power, with any of these parts, causes, and any involvement from our own side. They're like out there. They've taken on a life of their own. Thinking that things exist like this, we then have this very strange and dysfunctional relationship with them. We think they are the reason why we are happy. We think they are the reason why we are unhappy. We build up an expectation, a demand on that object, that inanimate object that it can never deliver, to fulfill our deepest needs, to be worthy of value, to meet our potential. We want this object to do that for us. And because it can't, we go through this entire process of acquisition and throwing things away. Acquisition, throw away, acquisition, throw away. They cannot meet that need because they change. They will eventually cease to exist, which is their nature. All right, so that's a form of dissatisfaction, form of dukkha. So it's bad enough that we do that with inanimate objects, but we do that with each other. We start off okay. We all agree on what a human being is because we basically have the same cause and condition. We have basically the same parts. We're all generally functioning like one, so we're human beings. Then each of us throughout our lives gather other labels due to actions, qualities we manifest, functions we fulfill, roles we take. Each of us have quite a large collection of labels that help us to navigate the world and for people to some extent understand something about us. We all agree what a farmer is, a doctor is, a meat packer is, a translator is. We're all on board with that. And because we have agreed upon the definition, the criteria, the characteristics of the person with that label, we can then have some realistic expectations and accountability of that person to hold up to their end of the relationship. And if they don't fulfill the criteria or the function, or they stop fulfilling the criteria, we have agreed upon, it's appropriate that we ask them to remove that label, or they step away, they cease to be that. I mean, this is how people exist conventionally for the most part. Label, function, stop doing that, remove the label. But note, we don't explicitly ever say, oh yeah, by the way, while you're wearing that label, you will make me happy, and you better not make me suffer while you're wearing that label that I just gave you. And once again, we forget that we all just agreed on that label for that function that human being is doing. And instead, we believe that they have become that label through and through from their own side. And once again, we get into trouble with people just like we do with inanimate objects. Beyond the convention of labeling, along with that comes some unrealistic expectations, some demands, some erroneous assumptions that they're always going to make us happy doing that function, wearing that label, being that inherently existent person from their own side. If not, look out. So I can't help but say that I see this happening in the human family right now We are having a labeling frenzy these past few years, and we are slinging them at each other at an astonishing rate. We're trying to make them stick inherently, but we have a problem. Right now, we all generally, conventionally, we need to agree to the definition, to the criteria on who gets that label and if they function to fulfill that. We can't agree on a lot of things these days. Who and what is Antifa? Who or what is a fascist? What's a never-Trumper? What's a thug? What's an incompetent moron? What's a deplorable? What's woke? What's deep state? What's evil? What's narcissistic? What's alt-right? What's mask wearer? What's an essential worker? We can't agree on any of it. In fact, we are on opposite sides of the spectrum, saying that does not apply to that, but does apply to that. That doesn't mean what I say, it means what this says, and all hell is breaking loose because we cannot decide. We are throwing these labels at each other, demanding that people wear them. And when they don't, or they refuse to function like that, we're just getting furious with each other. Lots of labels, mental constructs, thoughts, conceptualizations coming from our minds. And what makes this even more tragic is that in the process of demanding these labels be placed on each other, we are diminishing ourselves, pigeonholing ourselves, boxing ourselves in, squeezing ourselves, oppressing, harming each other deeply by trying to force these labels on a non-existent basis of designation. And not only that along with the labels come our unrealistic expectations, our biases, our projections, our stereotypes, our conditionings, our filters, and oh, don't forget, inherent existence. To the point that we are becoming unrecognizable to each other. We can't recognize each other as belonging to the same family, with the same label, sentient being. And because of this wild labeling frenzy, we have lost the simple yet profound weaving that interconnects all the threads that represent each of us to each other. Which is, just like you, I want to be happy. Just like you, I don't want to suffer. This is the basic function of a human being, characterized by an innate goodness, a yearning to learn the causes of happiness and the causes of suffering. It has been buried. This beautiful weaving of connectedness and humanity has been buried under a pile of concepts and labels fueled by ignorance and confusion. So for those of us who have met the Dharma and have within our grasp this jewel of truth on what is the sure cause for happiness and pain, right in here, the labels serve to the extent that we use them to help ourselves and others, and help ourselves and others not to harm each other. As far as I'm concerned, that's the purpose of labeling. So we want to utilize conventionalities. We want to utilize labels, terms, but always looking ahead to understand the ultimate nature as well. Not to hold so tight onto the labels we create on the journey to awakening so that we bind ourselves to samsara rather than helping us free ourselves from it. And we try and understand, as Venerable said today, what is happiness? What is the deepest, deepest meaning of happiness and its causes? And what is the deepest, deepest meaning of pain or dukkha, and what are the causes? And to try to find that out, not down out there nailing everything down. It won't work, can't work. But to opening up everything in here. So when I see how much I project, how much I judge, impute more than just a label, and how much that separates me, and it cuts this thread of connectedness, I really see that I have a lot to practice on the path to help me see that. And when I really look at the world right now, And I'm able to look at the situation we're in. Like I said this morning, I'm getting more stunned at what we really are doing to each other. Instead of me pulling away, if I can hold on to the Buddhist teachings, it has been really helping grow this incredible tenderness, this this tender kind of love that's saying, my God. And then from that, this bodhicitta, this feeling lately of saying, I have got to get the heck out of here, to free myself, and to be able to have the skills to come back and guide. I can't do it now because I'm still stuck in the labeling. I'm still stuck in the imputations. But to be able to see this little window because of the Dharma, of freeing myself. Because we undermine each other's goodness and potential by reifying and solidifying each other with these inherently existent labels. So however we label ourselves, let's really commit to deconstructing what they do to us. How they squeeze us all into a corner or prevent us from seeing our commonality, our humanity, our goodness, our interdependentness. And then from there, boy, the compassion can flow, the bodhicitta can flow, the renunciation can flow. So that's what I'm working on for my own sanity.